We'll go ahead and get started. If a few more people join us, great. But if not, this is a nice small group for us to kick around some ideas for the next 90 minutes or so. I'll begin. My name is Kaitlin Bove. I am the Director of Bands and Orchestras at Pierce College in Puyallup, Washington. I'm also the founder of And We Were Heard, who we're hosting. Today, we are an organization that helps underrepresented composers get their wind band music recorded. We're going to be launching an orchestra track in the next month or so, so really excited about that. The focus of today's meeting is going to be talking about adaptive and flexible instrumentation music for generally school band programs, whether that's middle school, high school, or college, as a response to restrictions being placed on institutions for COVID-19 this fall and possibly into who knows when. So we don't have tons and tons of definite answers, but we do have lots of experiences to share and different ways people are coping with this. And so we're glad you're here with us to hopefully help you be more comfortable with how to navigate in this time. So that's me, and I'd love for everyone else to also introduce themselves. Let's start with Jen next, and then I'll just kind of read down the roster here to call everybody else's names.
All right, I'm gonna let someone in first, but hello everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Jen Jolley. I'm a composer. I currently hail in Lubbock, Texas, because I'm an assistant professor in composition at Texas Tech University. I'm also part of the Creative Repertoire Initiative, which I would say is like a committee that's determined to help each other out and figure out the solution to COVID and what we're doing in the fall, because no one knows yet. So thank you so much for having me, and yeah.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, I'm just reading down the roster here alphabetically. It looks like Kate Nishimura, if you are able to talk, would you mind coming on and introducing yourself?
Hi, I just got here to the meeting. Thank you for setting this up. I'm really excited to see what other people are up to. To be honest, I joined this mostly to listen to what others are doing and hopefully learn a little bit about some of the other ways that composers are approaching this. I have been working on one flexible instrumentation piece so far of one of my existing works, as a way to just get started with that approach to things. But it's been a little overwhelming for me, so I'm looking forward to seeing what other people are doing. You asked me to introduce myself, and I skipped over all of that. So if you don't know me, my name is Kate, and I am a full-time composer, mostly of concert band works. I live in Toronto in Canada.
Thank you, Kate. Sorry, there's a car going by me. Christian, you are next. And Christian might not be able to talk this moment. So
sorry.
There you are.
I'm on my phone. I just found out how to unmute. I think I can even start video for a second. My name's Christian. I'm involved with And We Were Heard, helping with recordings. I'm in touch with a lot of teachers and just know how much things are changing, and want to be a part of and in the loop for all the adaptations that need to be made in order to teach and learn successfully.
Thanks, Christian. Next up, Christina, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Christina Rusnak. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I'm a almost full-time composer. I do some freelance consulting work. I'm working on 5 pieces, all of which are things I previously composed. 3 of them are more chamber pieces that are part of my repertoire for younger performers anyway, and so I'm making them more adaptive and flexible. One is a wind band, grade 1, 1.5 mixed level wind band with a grade 3 soloist that I am adapting, reducing and adapting. I've got 5 parts plus percussion. I hope that's not too much, and a solo. And then as soon as I'm done with that, in the next week or so, I'm working on a grade 4/5 longer piece, about a 7-minute piece that actually started out as a chamber work. Then I fleshed it out to wind band, and now I'll be bringing it back down. So hopefully that won't take me too long, but I hope to finish everything except the last one by mid-August. I mean, by end of July, and the last one by mid-August. So that's where I am.
Thanks, Christina. You sound busy. Let's move. Let's move on next to Drew. Drew, would you introduce yourself?
My name is Drew Swatosh. I'm from Vancouver, Washington. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And I primarily actually write vocal and choral music, but I'm halfway through writing my first wind ensemble piece. And I'm curious how I might take that and influence the process in adapting it for flexible instrumentation.
Thanks, Drew. Jeff, you're up next.
Hi, sorry, I'm cooking bacon right now, so I'm going to be running in and out of this. My name is Jeff Kumagai. I am a high school teacher in the East Bay, Brentwood, California. I recently took up this position last year where I teach 3 concert bands, 2 of 3 jazz bands, and a string orchestra. I am here trying to get some ideas on how I can adapt my curriculum this year. I have a couple of ideas in incorporating etudes and method books for individual instruction, but if we are allowed to do some rehearsing, I'm looking for some ideas on how I can deal with some smaller ensembles right now.
Thanks, Jeff. You'll be a good resource for our composers as they're trying to figure out what bands are looking for right now. Next up, Jennifer.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Rose. I am a newly retired, I guess, but I'm not old enough to retire, supposedly, band director for 14 years. I've been composing for about 20 years, and I mostly do wind ensemble. I've dabbled in orchestra, but that's definitely not my strong suit. I love working with electroacoustic pieces, and I just finished one. I was just messing around with GarageBand one day, and I had some fun, killing some time, and I turned it into a fully adaptable piece for marimba, 5 parts, 5 players, marimba, 4 parts, and fixed media. And it's actually, depending on the octaves that they choose, it could be middle school to high school students, and I intend on doing that more in the future. That's just like my first piece of a collection. The electronic media, it's just so much fun with band. So that's me. Oh, I'm in Joplin, Missouri.
Thank you, Jennifer, and your background's beautiful as well.
Yeah, it's so Joplin.
Let's move on to Joanne. Joanne, if you can unmute, if you will introduce yourself.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Oops. Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed the beginning of this. I didn't think I was going to have to introduce. I was just tuning in to listen. Right now, I'm a graduate student at the University of Minnesota. I'm actually outside on a beach and just wanted to hear what people were had to say about just flexible instrumentation.
Awesome. We're glad you're here. Thanks for being here. Let's move on to Joe. Joe, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, my name is Joe Jackson. I'm a rising junior at James Madison University for my bachelor's in composition. And so I'm pretty much here for good reason as Joanne, just to learn about flexible adaptation of wind band music and to help discuss ideas.
That's great. We're so glad you're here, and congrats on being halfway through your degree. That's awesome.
Yes. Halfway
Jonathan, yeah. Jonathan, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Jonathan Viella. I currently live in Austin, Texas. I am entering, I think, what will be my final year at the University of Texas, finishing up a DMA in wind conducting. I'm very happy to be a part of And We Were Heard, and I'm here in this meeting just, you know, like everyone else is, to listen, to learn what's happening, and to listen with eager ears to see if I can help with anything or help facilitate any of the projects.
Thanks, Jonathan. And I love the new facial hair you've got growing in. That's great.
Thank you.
Molly, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Molly Budiansky. I'm on my work Zoom account, so it won't let me change it to my full name. Sorry about that. I am a composer, mostly focusing on wind band. I've sort of put that aside right now, and I'm kind of revisiting a lot of chamber music that I don't really get to work on so much because I'm splitting my time between a day job and composing. But so I'm mostly here to see what other people are up to and the kinds of solutions that folks are discovering.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Megan, you are up next.
Hi, my name is Megan. I'm an undergrad student in Canada, just outside of Toronto, and I am finishing up my bachelor's in composition, and I'm interested to hear what people are up to and learn some things.
Great, congrats on almost being done. Michael, we'll have you introduce yourself now.
Hi, I'm Michael Shun. I'm from Newmarket, New Hampshire. I just finished up my master's in composition at the University of New Hampshire, which is some great timing, as you can guess. I'm mostly just been like relaxing just because I'm trying to find a job first and foremost. So I've kind of taken like a back seat on writing ever since I graduated till now. I'm hoping this gets some ideas going so I can get back into it and then eventually gear up for a DMA soon.
That's wonderful, congrats, and you'll figure something out. We always do. Finally, last but not least, and please correct me if I pronounce your name wrong, is it Ryan? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's Ryan. That's actually a really good guess to start. Anyway, my name is Ryan Seisky. I'm a second-year doctoral composer at the University of Miami Frost School of Music. I recently, in the last 2 or 3 months, have received six chamber music commissions, but I have actually lost almost all of them because of COVID. And one of them was a flex band commission with, or I guess a consortium with my alma mater, as well as a couple other wind ensembles, and I lost that. So I'm really here just to see what other people are doing and see if others would maybe want to collaborate on that. It's not a finished piece. When I found out I lost the consortium, that I kind of just stopped writing it, but I really want to get back into it. So just here to see what people have to say. And yeah.
Thanks so much, Ryan. It would be great for us to hear kind of what your process was there, and maybe that'll help kickstart some stuff for you. Was there anyone I missed who didn't get a chance to introduce themselves? All right. We will then move on to Jen kind of kicking off a little bit about what she's been doing. So Jen is a member of the Creative Repertoire Initiative, which if you have not heard who they are, she will explain that. She'll talk a little bit about the strategies they've been discussing in some of their meetings, and then also just do a share screen and share some of the adaptive music she's been working on just recently in the past few months. While she's doing that, I'm going to be putting some URL resources into the chat, just if you want to bookmark these items if you aren't aware of them already. And at any point while Jen is speaking, if you do have a question for her, you could either do a hand raise with your inside Zoom, or you could put it in the chat and we can pause and have you ask the question. So Jen, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a quick rundown of what the Creative Repertoire Initiative is, or CRI. We are a think tank, and I actually see us as a group of composers who are like, oh my goodness, what is happening? Our gigs are getting canceled, but furthermore, and most importantly, a lot of you band directors out there don't even know what's going to happen in the fall. Like, we were all here to like put music on this planet and make music together, and all of a sudden we can't sing together. We have a super spreader like trombone instrument and flute instruments and whatnot. And so we came together as kind of like, how can we brainstorm solutions and help you all out to figure out different ways in which to approach this problem, which in a way we still don't have like 100% knowledge what we're all doing in the fall. We all live in different places. Every single school district is coming up with different solutions. Every school district is changing said solutions. I didn't even know the state of Texas was even going to be maxed up 2 weeks ago. And has it been 2 weeks? I don't even know anymore. Like I'm just like, we don't know what's going on. So what we're doing is we're coming together, giving you all resources. So I'm happy to talk to you about some of the resources that I've shared. We're not a group that's like only promoting our own music. And I will also put a push for the Facebook group, because we want more people to share the music that we've been working on to band directors. And in fact, actually a lot of us members were like, hey, you haven't been promoting your own music. We're like, oops, we should have been doing that. But so we'll give you some variations on what we've come up with, because this is such a multifaceted problem. So I think there are different multifaceted solutions, and the good news is that we're all creators in one way or another. So I think that there are more than one way to do this. So I'll focus on the ways that I've kind of come up with. The first one is I actually think there is a little bit of a silver lining in all this, in that I think this is a great time for students to learn about composing and improvisation, especially because we can't even make the decisions right now. As composers, we're so used to making decisions, like with regards to notes, to lines, to instrumentation, right? And the timbres and something like that. And we don't have that right now, but here's a time where we can teach students and even have band directors make those decisions for us, because they know their own situation better than we do. So the first piece I did was I adapted an improvisatory piece. In fact, I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen right now and share the whole screen, and also share my computer sound. I learned that the hard way 2 weeks ago. All right, so I have this little folder called Flex. And I know that the CRI does not like the term flex, because there's kind of like a flex trademark that Hal Leonard and some other friends have done, and there's kind of like a different subset of that. So we're using the word adaptable, but I like to use my flex emoji. So anyways, I decided to adapt a piece called Sounds from the Grey Goo, and I originally wrote it for a Canadian friend of mine, actually, who's a bass clarinetist in when I was in grad school. And I think it went to the cloud, so at least I know it's backed up. Here we go. And it's a cell-based piece. And even during one of the CRI things at the end, they're like, can we even make up the rhythms too? At this point, I'm like, just let it go, which I understand it's very hard for all of y'all composers. So here is the original piece. What I had were 4 different Japanese pentatonic scales, and the reason why I chose them is because they weren't a hemionic, which meant that they had some semitones in them, and they could be minor sounding, because sometimes I like some dissonance in my life. And the idea was, here are the pitches, and at first this top part, this part 1 and part 2, was not part of the original piece, because Rebecca on her bass clarinet would just like improvise, and the concept was an electronic piece where she would improvise 40 different potential cells, and then I would just pick one on my computer and then process them. Now, I know for some improvisers it's really scary, and in fact my friend Omar Thomas yesterday was like, improvising is not like getting up in front of the stage with the spotlight on you and just jamming and be all perfect. No. We want to try to make like improvising as fun as possible, and it doesn't have to be scary. So the idea is that let's say you have a group. We don't know how big that group is, but maybe let's say we have 2 players. We have group A and group B. It could only be 2 players, and maybe they're spaced apart because we don't know. Okay, and we're gonna have a conversation. Player 1 is gonna pick one of these scales. Now, the first measure, I purposely picked a whole note, because that's not hard. You could just pick a note and you can play that same note within that cell and just do a crescendo from a niente, just a little soft thing, okay? And then they'll move on to the next cell and they could pick a different scale. Now, how did I adapt it? I made sure that, ooh, did I mess this? No, I didn't. I made sure that it was all in treble clef and then also in bass clef. And for fun, I added octaves, because like, it's just about the pitch classes. You know, I know that everybody's at a different level. Could be they don't know their instrument yet. Could be that they sound terrible at this note. And I don't want anybody to sound terrible. Who wants to sound terrible, right? So I figured pentatonic scale was pretty low key. And I especially gave them rhythms. And what is on the second part here is that originally I would do key slaps. Now, a few of the instruments can do key slaps, but some of them cannot. Like a key slap on a trumpet is like, meh. So they could do like blow air through their instrument. Or you know what? Let's say you're a clarinetist and I originally wanted you to do key slaps. You can still blow air. Like, it doesn't matter. Do you know what I'm saying? The idea is to have a communication with each other. And the reason why there's like a harmonic list there is because turns out that, you know, orchestras are large ensembles too, and my orchestra friends are like, I don't even know what's going to happen. So anyways, they go from low to high. And one of the things I want to point out in my piece, and this might be hard for composers, but I'm going to talk you through it, I promise. So I say, now on the fun part, I said a conductor / ensemble / performer can decide how they want to shape this piece. Not everyone or every instrument has to play all the time. And I thought of this because I was like, heaven forbid, what if you have a whole bunch of piccolos in a room, but you don't know? It could be that their last names fell on that day that you all are meeting. However the school districts are deciding. And I'm like, that would just be a lot. But maybe they don't have to play at the same time because there's music and rests. So anyways, I said, maybe there's a leader who looks or points at people to play. Maybe there are color flashcards involved, which is my hat tip to Cobra, John Zorn. So that's my little hat tip to his piece there. And I said, maybe the pitches are made up and the ranges don't matter. And I said, please just go from low to high, but you know what, who cares? But ultimately the piece is your ensemble's. It's theirs. Do you know what I'm saying? And what I'm doing there is I'm making sure that everybody is in on the creative process. And I think improvisation is the gateway to do that. So I will mention that there are multiple ways of doing these cell pieces. They're on the CRI website. Frank Ticelli did one. I personally like Alex Shapiro. She just has a template and there are no notes. It's just instructions. She's like, just do a note, just play a note. You know what I mean? And I think for the band directors that are joining us, it could be a fun exercise as to creating a piece together. And we as composers can figure out parameters based on rhythms and based on notes and pitch collections that can work within cells. And you just have to like give up that control. So does anybody have any question on that technique of like creating a new piece that's more improvisatory and cell based? I think it would be really fun, by the way.
I do have one that I'm thinking about doing. I haven't like committed to doing it yet because I'm not sure how it will work. And you're right, that makes us uncomfortable, right? But I did it in conjunction with my 8-year-old who is sitting on the other computer at the other desk right here. But we kind of did it together and we improvised it and we kind of did it and we went with root movement and harmony and then said, okay, now play something above it. And what do you come up with? So that's my idea, but I haven't committed doing that yet. I'm just playing around with that at this point.
I kind of like, I think you should do it. Again, this is America and you decide what makes you feel comfortable or not. But like, I think it would be kind of fun if your daughter would be willing to say that you co-wrote the piece with her.
We're already doing that. She's already writing stuff on GarageBand and she's 8.
I love that so much. You know, and I think what I like about working with children is that they're not thinking about balance. I think that's our main fear, right? As composers, we're like, how do you balance this? And when I write for like, let's say regular band music, I'm like, how do we balance, right? But she's like, this sounds cool on GarageBand. You know what I'm saying? So I love that. Like no preconceived emotions. Also, like they don't think the piece has to be good. I'm sure what your daughter comes up with sounds cool. You know what I'm saying? But like, we have to, I feel like this is kind of a time for renewal for composers. And I said this at the WASB thing yesterday, and I swear like some of my like Blue Dot Collective friends were like, how can you say this? But like, if you don't think about color or timbre, and I know it's like taking a knife and it's like, because we're so trained to think about that. But we can't think about that right now. You know, I would say refocus at saying like, I look forward to the different colors and timbres that other ensembles will come up with based on the randomness on the roll sheet. And I know it's like giving up control. It's really hard. I remember once I had a therapist who was like, you can't control things. And my partner, now spouse, was like, does she understand she's talking to a composer? I said, no, I don't think she understands that we just like, we're like the puppet master. But I feel like in the time of COVID, it's something we need to do and it can be done. And my secret is actually when I write a wind ensemble piece, I don't stress out about color at first because it actually like stresses me out. So just let it go. Focus on beautiful lines. Think about it as an opportunity for the euphonium to finally get awesome lines. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's think of it as a democratic way of writing music. Think of like, that's kind of like the intent of Louis Andriessen. And like, I've been looking to Louis Andriessen right now of like open instrumentation, and it's okay. And if you need to grieve about it, because I think it's a grieving process of letting go balance, letting go timbre. It sucks. Grieve. Like, do what you need to do. If you're like, oh my God, it's just so difficult. Like, I understand, because it is. And it literally took me years to get to this place when I had an orchestra conductor friend who's like, it's more about the line. I'm like, no, how can you say that? It's okay. Life moves on. The idea is to create music and to allow students to make choices. It's okay. And I see a hand up. Megan, what's your question?
Just to like tail off that I'm currently like right now working on an online virtual like band camp thing, and one of the activities that we're planning is a conducted group improv with all the campers, and we tested it out last week, and it's like a lot of fun to do over Zoom, because sometimes like Zoom will accidentally mute someone, and like an instrument will come out more in the texture than necessarily is planned. And so I think that there's a lot of room for group improvisation, whether it's spaced out in a space together or virtually.
That's excellent to know that that works on Zoom and to our advantage. It's like, again, it's celebrating the spontaneity and the communication that happens. And again, does this suck? It does. This all sucks. It really does. But like, we can find beauty in this new format, honestly. Any other questions before I move on to adapting a piece for one of my former pieces? Well, not former, my earlier pieces.
I would love to, if we give everybody a moment to think about a question, just to introduce two more people who have come in the room since Jen started presenting, Gary and Haley. Gary, maybe if you first could unmute yourself and just introduce yourself to the room, what you're working on and why you're here.
It's Gary Nash, composer, professor of music at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. As far as what I'm working on now, well, unfortunately, nothing dealing with band, or which is why I came on. I mean, got the email and was interested. I am working on, well, let's see. There's a solo oboe piece right now. I actually started as a 1-minute piece, and I decided to write more other movements around it, so I'm almost finished with that. And I'm also doing an orchestration for a play, for a stage play. So that's the big one. Hopefully I'll be done with that by the end of the month. Other than that, just preparing to go back to school, whatever that's going to look like now. So.
Thank you, Gary. And Haley, would you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Haley Woodrow. I'm a composer based in Texas. Hey, Jennifer.
Hey.
Everybody. Yeah, I'm just wanting to join the conversation about adaptive works. I'm working right now. A director had organized a consortium, and he was ahead of the curve, so I was a little lucky with the adaptive thing, as well as one of the pieces of feedback he gave me that seems helpful is, especially with younger students that are recording their assignments, he was saying they really need short pieces of music, because it's just hard for them because they're little. They're like 12 or 13. So my consortium is for like a book, I guess I would call it. They're basically just compiled for each instrument. I'll probably have like 10 little arrangements, grade levels 1 through 3, and they're about 90 seconds. Some of them are 60 seconds. So yeah.
Thank you, Haley. Maybe you could share some of those with us in a bit, since we have an hour left. Kate had a question for Jennifer about that project, which maybe we need to stall. Oh, there we go.
No. It's my cat needing to come in. So go ahead and ask the question.
Thank you. Okay, I was just wondering if you have any suggestions for this cell-based approach or improvised sort of approach with multiple levels of students within the same kind of group. Just thinking about how, like, if you have a group of students that, you know, some of them have lots of experience performing on their instruments or even just with improvising or composing, and you have others that are really new or really timid, if you have any suggestions as to how to structure something that would incorporate, you know, varying degrees of comfort level with that.
That's an excellent question, and I'm actually going to ask my band director friends in a second to help with that question. With cells, I think the best way to do cells is to think of a scale or something that everybody will sound good with, which is why I went with pentatonic scales. It's another reason why in C works, because within each cell, it's like sounds good within each other. Does that make sense? Now, I think that to get the multiple grade levels, I'm thinking the best way to do it is through rhythm and the amount of notes. And so if you think of like, okay, here's big cell 1, and maybe within cell 1, there are like 5 grade levels of cells. And so much that grade 1 has a very simple note. It could be like a whole note. It could be a half note. Obviously, it can't be syncopated. Am I right, band directors? And then go up from there. So it's like based on their level and based on their comfort level, I think the teacher or instructor can say like, hey, you group over here, why don't you try following, let's say, tract 3, or maybe instead of grade levels, like put a letter or something like that. So therefore, you can have a composite. So like the kids who are like super like virtuosic can do like the harder stuff too. I think Kelly did that in his NC piece, which is not actually NC. That was a whole like, it's a whole other stream. But it like it satisfies the kids that like want something more. It would be like solo lines or maybe an optional solo cell within it. But that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like create cells within the levels. And as I said before, I borrowed this quote from a friend of mine. I think like grade levels are like women's pant sizes, so I kind of know what they can or can't do. But this is where I would like ask a band director friend to like look it over. And you know what? I think that the varying levels will also help those who are like terrified at improvising. Because let's be real, we were all terrified at improvising at first. And so they can do like the 1-note jam, and it'll still be okay as long as it fits in the scale and as long as it fits into the cell.
Do we have any band director friends that want to respond to that in terms of what they might envision for their own mixed difficulty level ensemble?
Well, I can respond. I have been a band director at a small school for 14 years, and my instrumentation was always lacking, even whenever I tried my darndest to recruit certain and put kids on certain instruments. But with a band of high school band of 19 or 25, we definitely didn't have a bassoon, which is my main instrument. And so I've always been, just on a personal note, sorry, I've always been pretty creative with piecing timbres together. So timbre hasn't actually been my main thing. But I'm sorry, I got off a little bit. I would say whenever you're dealing with various levels, the reason that I did octaves, I originally wasn't planning on doing octaves in the piece that I just finished. But when I started thinking about the different instruments that would be reading the same B flat part, you know, we've got a trumpet player and a clarinet. Well, a clarinet at a grade, you know, 2nd year middle school can play a G above the staff, but not necessarily a trumpet could, and it wouldn't sound so easy for them, or accessible, I should say. So that's when I realized that if I just put this in octaves and let the kids or the teacher or whoever decide which octave would be best suited for them, depending on their personal range, that would be a way to adapt it for more than just my high schoolers. So that's how I treat it as a band director, of ranging, because I had 8th graders through 12th graders in my high school band, and my 8th graders and my 12th graders could not play anything remotely close to each other. So that's always been a struggle with a small high school band. But
absolutely. I was gonna like add, like, speaking of lack of bassoon, I technically wrote Lightway knowing that the ensemble didn't have a bassoonist. this is such a thing. And actually, I'm kind of glad we're all talking about adaptable music, because y'all band directors who've had small ensembles for years, and I used to work at a small liberal arts school, it's like, y'all needed this repertoire like yesterday. You needed this like for so long. So I don't think this is something that's just gonna go away, which is why I'm really glad we're talking about this. And I think it's a great opportunity if you are a young composer to really start like looking for like writing these cell pieces or writing adaptable music, because it's not even just like small bands. We're talking about like new music ensembles who never know what their like enrollments are going to be in the fall, and they have to find new repertoire. Like seriously, this is going to stay. And also and I'll talk more about this later, in Japan they're actually having like a population decrease, so they can't even like have their full ensembles anymore. So this is where it is. And I'm not saying that we're going to get rid of our regular pieces, but I think there's just such an opportunity here, especially from like underrepresented composers, to like really get our niche in there and just really start getting our music performed and heard.
I would say as a director, I teach at a community I teach in a community band and a community college. So there's students in the band too. And some of these students are music majors planning on transferring to universities to finish their degrees. Some are just taking it for fun and like are, you know, they've been out of school for several years. They're coming back. They haven't touched their instrument. And so I have a big breadth of ability level. And I've found that just simplifying rhythms, you know, if there's a difference between a student who's practicing every day and who can play that kind of more advanced, just technical aspect rhythms. And then as long as you start dropping out 16th notes or just, you know, focusing on just like the bare bones of the melodic structure and simplifying that down for a musician who just isn't technically there, they can get a lot out of it if they're just playing basically simplified rhythms and still involved in the melody, or giving them some sort of almost like an ostinato hocketed little item to do along with it, which would work in a cell structure piece like what Jen is talking about. All right, if there are no other comments or questions on that, Jen, if you want to share your second piece you were going to, and then we'll just open it up to the room so everybody else can start sharing or talking about their own situations.
Absolutely. So I decided to adapt one of my pieces. I thought I'd start easier with grade 1, because that was easy for me and weren't as many lines, and go up. So I will share, I'm literally creating the parts for this. So if there are band directors, please let me know if like you need things in octaves, which I think I need to go back and look at. So here I'm gonna open Sibelius file. I wrote a grade 1 piece called Last Stage to Red Rock. And I kind of saw this in lines anyways, because, oops, no, let's not do that. All right, because I don't know, I used to play middle school flute, and when you're first starting middle school flute, it kind of sucks, especially if you're a composer who just wants to like take off the head joint and just start blasting like overtone series, which you can't do when you first start the flute. You're in that sad little octave, which sounds luscious according to Samuel Adler, but no one's gonna hear you. But that's just what it is. Okay. So Last Stage to Red Rock was scored for a typical grade 1 ensemble. And the technique I chose was Brian Balmages had a technique for this. And it's probably because in our group, he's like, this would work really well for your Last Stage to Red Rock piece. So I was like, all right, I'll go for that. Now he's saying that for grade 1, it should really be in 3 parts. So I know, Christina, you said that you have yours for 5 parts. I think the good news there is that at least somebody will play it. But again, I'm not a band director. I only know what a grade 1 pan size may fit like. So, so his suggestion, in fact, I have it on my desktop because again, I'm still doing it. Okay. So this is all on the CRI website. And what I did was, I knew this is a grade 1 piece. And he said, the first step is to write for all trumpets, whether it's 3 or 4. And he says, because it has a tendency to work on multiple instrumental levels, so like less work for you. Things you have to worry about are the break, right? Am I right? And it could be that like the oboe might need something else because the oboes like, they only have like so much of a range anyways. And just to do that. So I actually did do that at first. I was like, all right, I took my original score, I added 3 trumpet lines, and I just adapted it. My concern was I realize they're playing all the time. And again, since I'm not a middle school band director, I'm like, what if their faces fall off? But I guess we'll decide that later. So I did that, and then I put it in C. So technically these parts are C trumpet parts. And I had part 1, part 2, part 3, and then I'd play them back just to make sure I got everything. Okay. And it turns out, let me pull up a part. It works okay with oboe. And I have like my little chart of ranges. So this is my part 1, oh, that's my part 1 treble clef and B flat. So this should work for clarinets, any B flat instrument, and I double check the ranges. And I know that for like parts 2 and 3, I just had to scrunch it together. I did have like more than 3 parts at some points. I had to be like, all right, who has the 5th, right? You could always take that out and just adapt it. I think it's pretty successful there. The other thing that I took from Brian's advice was he had an alternate B flat tenor saxophone part and an alternate F horn part. I think, like, according to ranges, but again, I'm not teaching, right? I'm not teaching children. The horn part for parts 1, 2, and 3 seemed to be okay, but just in case, I just added the horn part from the original horn part that I did. So it's pretty basic. Now, it could be you can't have that happening all the time, but maybe you have a B flat tenor saxophone who's a little bit weaker, but maybe the other 3 parts are there or the other 2 parts are there. But what I think saves it most of all is he's like, sometimes it helps to have a very basic piano part. And I'm like, that's actually not a bad idea. So I created a very basic piano part that doesn't double everything, actually. So you'll notice here, okay, that looks like it's a doubling, but I thought of the piano as a percussive part. So let me scroll and show you what I'm talking about. So you notice like parts 1, 2, and 3 here. Actually, this is where they're supposed to be quiet, because I told the kids I wrote this for, I was like, I think of the audience of my pieces, and your parents are going to be in the audience, and they don't know that you're not going to play for 2 measures. I know I'm a terrible person, but like, actually it's important to learn about rest. But do you see how the piano goes like ding right there? Okay, so it'll help fill it out. So I did that. I kept my percussion parts, my non-pitch percussion parts, just in case they are optional, and I probably should put optional and a keyboard percussion part, because again, you don't know what you're going to get. But I will say that without a piano part, the first 3 parts work out fine. But I think that there are options. So does anybody have any questions about this?
Jennifer, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Your alternate tenor saxophone parts and your alternate horn part. So when you say alternate, are you meaning like a substitution for one of the parts?
It could be in addition. It could be like if the B flat tenor saxophone or horn part can't play parts 1, 2, and 3, like on part range here. Let me pull up one that I've done. And again, y'all, so here's part 1 in F. Ooh, yeah, that looks like a hot mess. Oh, because I separated it. Okay, hold on for a second. Because I had to change the octave. So you actually, I'll go back to the full score. What you'll notice is like part 1's in treble clef for the score, part 2's in treble clef, and part 3's in bass clef. I will have treble and bass clef in C and B flat. I think E flat we only need a treble clef, but it's just for the band director so they don't have to see a whole bunch of parts at once, which like I'm curious to use the Frank Ticheli model. The only drawback, I think, and we told this to his face, so we're not saying anything bad about it, is that there's just like a lot of lines. So I think the advantage for a director in seeing all those lines is that they don't have to transpose, but it is a lot of staves, or it's here I really wanted something clean and concise. So I had to separate the F part because it was out of range. It looked pretty high for a horn part. So I just adjusted the octaves. Now, if a horn player, if they're not advanced enough to do that, what they could do is play this alternate part instead. And I think it could work. But if that's not a great idea, like tell me now, because again, I'm not really done yet. I wanted to be done by today, but like I also wanted to like drink and watch The Office in my evenings because of COVID. So also I'm teaching at Interlochen. We have 2 more days left. So so that's what it is. It's like it's an adjunct. You don't need that part. But if they want to play that part and the other voices support it, like I still think it'll work, especially with the piano part.
Jennifer, I think having that alternate horn part is a good alternative. Because that opens up the possibility for the range. So it's a really.
Yeah, and I will say that Brian suggested to do that. The last thing he suggested too, and I haven't gone around to it, was providing an MP3 so that kids can play along at home. So I need to figure out how to do, I might just do something just completely out there just because I've been teaching my interlocking kids Ableton. Maybe we could just throw in some like filters and that'd be kind of a fun project, because why not, y'all? It's all about the line. It's all about creating music. And also Ableton's pretty awesome, and I should just upgrade again because I wanted to talk to Max. So so I use the Balmages technique specifically for grade 1. I do think he has a point that grade 1 pieces really can only do 3 lines together. I think that's just, you can't have anything too long. I think that's just where they're at in their stage. So any other questions?
I actually do have a question just about creating parts. So I know that in like the Tekeli format, for example, there's like you said, a lot to look at, and all of those specific instruments I have to imagine would have a specific part created for each of the different, like part 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever that they would be playing. I'm curious to know if people think that that's a good idea to have like every part available for every instrument, or having a B flat part, E flat part, C treble, C bass, like those kinds of options, versus giving the band director a folder of like 100 files because you have every single part available for every single instrument.
Yeah, I'm actually curious to know that too, because like I feel like for Sounds for the Grey Goo, I have like a bazillion parts, and here I do not want as many parts. But it looks like Jennifer's like doing this with her hand. I don't know. Any comments?
Yeah, actually, what I would recommend is doing something like it. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the Duets for All or Trios for All collection, but I used those a lot in my younger kids when my high schoolers were preparing solos to go to state or district. The younger kids would use Duets and Trios for All, and those are basically just 4 or 5 books. They're either B flat, E flat, F for horn, and then C, and then they have the bass clef. And so what you did with C treble, B flat treble, and that's why I was doing octaves in that, because like I said, the clarinet and the horn, or the clarinet and the trumpet, don't read the same range all the time. So I would, as a band director, I would really just like the book for handing that out to students, or just the B flat part, because kids can read the octaves that they're used to.
Okay, and as a follow-up question to that then, would you like, or would band directors like to have all of the parts for each key or each clef at once, or a separate page for each part? So to clarify, let's say you have the B flat part and you have, at the top corner, B flat instruments, and you have basically a mini score that includes parts 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. Disadvantages to that would include it just being a lot more pages, whereas if you have like B flat part 1 and it's 1 page, B flat part 2 and it's 1 page, but it's more things to hand out to people. So I don't know what people have to say about that, but I'm kind of curious.
If I could chime in, I would say, having taught middle school, high school, and collegiate ensembles, beginners are really bad about reading multiple staves. They'll just read this line and then go to the next line, even though it's the same line they just played on the B part. So I would say if you're like looking at a grade 1, 1.5, maybe 2, to separate the parts out so they're not looking at each other's parts, because they'll get lost, they'll get overwhelmed. There's a lot for the band director to explain with a mask on, you know. But I would say as you move into higher levels, high school, or if you're going to do something more advanced, that the musicians tend to appreciate being able to see each other's parts, because then they're like kind of thinking more collaboratively as they're reading their line. They're seeing what everybody else is playing and trying to respond. Also, there may be issues of balance and tweaking in the moment where a director might say, okay, at this part, can we have more people on the second line instead of the first line, you know? And so then because everyone's got their part right in front of them, they can just make those quick adjustments of which staff they're reading off of. So I would do it based on that. I would also say, like, if you're writing a 3-part piece, you know, likely the tubist would only ever play part 3 and the flutists would only ever play parts 1 and 2. So I don't think you need to include all 3 parts for every instrument voice. I think you can kind of do 2 or 1, depending on like just the role that instrument traditionally fills out in the ensemble, unless you want to just mix up, you know, lines in different octaves. So that would be my feedback.
And Jennifer, what was the duet book? What was that called again?
I believe it was, there's multiple ones, but it's just duets for all, trios for all. And they also have like classical duets and classical trios and holiday stuff as well. But those have been around for years.
Yeah, I'd be curious as a composer just to see that layout. Oh yes, thank you, Kaitlin. Granted, parts are always the worst, so it's always a great question. Yeah, I'd probably be done sooner if I wasn't like, oh, parts. No, so sorry, guys.
All right. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to clarify because I'm a more of a picture person. I was going to show how my score looks for this piece that I just did. I haven't ever done this before, so I'm so sorry. Am I just supposed to share screen?
Yeah, just go ahead and share screen. I allowed you to do it.
Okay. All right.
And if it makes you feel better, as a computer music person at Interlochen, I forgot to share the screen sound, and my whole class is based on listening to really weird music. So we all failed together. I was like, so I'm like sound flowering, like sound flowering, like, oh my gosh, it was so stupid.
Well, I have to quit Zoom, so I guess I can't do that.
Oh,
So I changed the settings.
Can you like send a PDF through the chat and then we'll share it?
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay. I'm gonna mute.
I have a question, if y'all don't mind.
Yeah, no problem.
For band directors, I'm trying to get in touch with, are you all actually trying to give like assignments for distance learning, like kids at home? One of the reasons I'm asking is because I don't know whether to, like with the MB3 that they're playing along with, to give a lead in with the click, but then I was thinking, well, that's going to confuse kids if I don't put it in the notation as well, you know, like, you know, click, click, 1, 2, ready, go, like notated in the first couple of measures. But then I thought, oh gosh, but is that going to confuse people that are in person? So I don't, are there assignments going on that are distance learning, or are we mostly thinking of planning for in person?
So I taught my entire the spring quarter in Washington all online because it started after spring break. And so we did a whole quarter of that. And right now we're being told that we can be in person, but they're saying, oh, we're watching the COVID numbers climb. And so we might be canceling any minute. We'll let you know. But band would be one of the only things allowed on campus anyways in the fall. Everything else, like academic classes, are all online. So I am trying to prepare for finding music that I can rehearse in person, but if we get like canceled out of nowhere, we can just shift all that music online. And so yes, the click track that you're talking about with being able to perform it at home is something really valuable to me. I would say that if in your MP3 recording, you could just use your voice and say, there will be 4 clicks before the music starts. Click, 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 start. I think that will take care of whether they're listening to it in person or at home.
Yes, so you're encouraging me not to be lazy and just actually create that. No, I can do that.
Girl, I feel you on that
Yeah.
because I was like, I have to create an MP3 click track. No, I feel you.
Yeah.
Where's the time? I don't know. And you have a baby. I don't like. Okay.
I'm lucky. I have a stay-at-home daddy too, so I'm lucky this year. But follow-up question then for you directors: where do you feel like there's more of a need then? So you say you really are having to kind of like prepare yourself for two possible scenarios. Like we could be back at home at any time. Do you feel like there's more for your needs that already exists for in-person adaptable, or do you think there's less or more that exists for these online assignments? Where's the need?
And other directors can speak up too, but I think for me, I'm really concerned about the online stuff. Like I said, I had a whole quarter doing online. I did 3 projects that were all, one was a real piece of music that we tried to record like via watching each other on Zoom, but recording ourselves at home. The other 2 were student, like either improvisation or student composition projects. The big issue I had was they were all just like giving up and like not trying very hard and just like, quarantine. So I think that the better the production value, if you will, of like these possible electronic tracks to accompany them at home. So when they play it and then they play along to it on whatever instrument they're playing, they feel like they're involved in something that's already happening and they're not just recording themselves in silent with like a metronome. That will encourage them to be more receptive and excited about the project. My students are normally super excited and they were just all like comatose like the entire quarter. I couldn't get them to do hardly anything because even with me trying to be like, let's do this, they were all having to just create stuff in a vacuum and a void. So I think, yeah, if you, those MP3 tracks, as annoying and maybe untrained as you are to prepare for them, the better you can make those and the more exciting, interesting, engaging, I think that's going to get the students behind the project more if they have to be home recording. And I would say that I'm seeing less of that and more of adaptive in-person music coming out. So like if you had a choice about which one you were going to put out there to try and fill a gap, my guess is it's going to be the music that has to be recorded at home. I don't know what other directors are seeing in their own areas. If Jonathan or Jeff want to speak up, if Jeff is still here.
Unmute. Okay, there we go. Thank you. I'm on a phone now, which I typically don't Zoom from. Yes, I mean, I would say it's the same thing as Kaitlin. Kaitlin has had more experience with this through her position. To give you some background, when the university or at the University of Texas, when all of this began, it was just very much an online platform, and rather than work to kind of rebound and secure ways of making music, all of the ensembles just kind of moved into a temporary seminar sort of situation to where the groups would meet and we would bring in guest speakers. So to answer the original question, be it between the 2 options, I would just say yes to both. And I think that answer has to be it because at least for the state of Texas right now, it's just there's so much ambiguity with what the school year is going to look like. Yes, there are plans for us to resume normalcy. It's a bit concerning how many university emails are saying, you know, that word of normalcy. But I think from the other side of it, the student side and the professor side, there's just great anticipation that we will all start the school year as planned and then completely go online, which would change the needs again. So yeah, I mean, both I think have to be planned for.
Thank you. Anybody else want to respond to that? I pulled up Jennifer Rose's piece, so I can share that if we're ready to move on to that, but I want to make sure that question got responded to.
I will say something really quickly. I'm not a band director anymore, but trying to speak on behalf of people that I know in Canada who are. A number of directors that I've talked to here are being told to plan for a hybrid model, which would involve classes rotating who's on campus and who's not, so as to limit the number of people that are there at any given time. So let's say, for example, you would have like a band class, you know, every other day, but every other session is in person or at home. And so I think, just to reiterate the need for the MP3 and stuff like that, because, you know, let's say on the home days, you know, you can play along with that track. And then when you're in person at a distance and all of that, then the adaptive, like, you know, being able to try to piece it together as a group would come in handy. But something that would kind of serve both of those possibilities, I think would really benefit people that are doing any kind of that hybrid sort of model.
Thanks, Kate. Any other responses to that, whether they're thinking more in terms of the virtual versus in-person flexible and the MP3 question? All right, we're gonna go ahead and share my screen, but Jennifer Rose, you can go ahead and talk and just let me know what you want me to do as far as showing off your score here.
Okay. So if we go to page 2, which is the fully adaptable instrumentation, this was originally just 4 parts, and it's what, as a band director, what I want to see in front of me is the least confusing thing possible. And being a bassoonist, I didn't have to worry about transposing, and I am actually not a composition major, nor am I a music education major. So, I mean, I got my master's in composition, but I didn't transpose very well when it came to teaching when I first started teaching. So I just want to, but I don't want to see score, because then I have to transpose even more. So these are the books or parts that are available that I've listed, and I put tuba or bassoon, even though bassoon can do C bass clef, because it depends if you got a tuba or not. If you'll scroll to the next page, this is what the score looks like. So this is what the band director looks at. Actually, this one is a C score. I forgot, sorry. But the marimba part is the only thing that's not fully adaptable. There's a you could use xylophone too, but it's too big of a range for bells. If you scroll down just a little bit more, the most difficult rhythm in this is with the marimba, and it's just straight eighth notes. And then we've got a dotted half note. So I kept it as simple as possible. And that's because the marimba is busy, but it's really basic. So these are just 4 parts in a marimba. Now, if you recall, I did say that this was with fixed media, which I don't have any cues for, and I learned that from a tuba performance. He said there's just too much electronics in my score. I don't want to see all that. I want to see my rests, so I can just count my rests. But anyway, do you mind going back to the second page at the bottom right there, program notes? So originally I had a certain 4 instruments in mind, or ranges, and so I put those there. But if you'll read there, it says, however, any instrument can play any part in whichever octave is most comfortable for the player. Because of this, the music may be adaptable for younger players or more mature. So that's what I want to see, is something as simple as possible. I don't mean in ability of playing, I just mean the less I have to look at while I'm conducting, the better. So that's all I was trying to clarify.
Thanks, Jennifer. Do you want us to look at anything else going on in the score here? Before we just stop sharing.
No, you can stop sharing. On a side note, I did want to say on the MP3s, I did actually make recordings for each part and the fixed media, because we had completely online, and I knew my kids were, whenever I went online last semester, my kids were really struggling with playing something online together. And the only thing that I could ever get recorded was our school song. And that's because everybody had it memorized. And I had a percussionist start the recording, and then we went from there. So having something more than just a click track is, when you're talking about the MP3s, I think is important to not only the timing of the piece, but for the kids' involvement. The more that we can engage them, the better.
Thank you, Jennifer. I agree. Whether they're middle school kids or the collegiate students I was working with, that if they're having to create in a vacuum by themselves, they are not used to it. They're not enjoying it. It's not why they joined an ensemble, and they don't make the effort that they do when they're in a full ensemble setting. So that is one way to kind of counteract that that issue. We still have tons of time left. Who would like to either share a piece they're working on, or maybe talk about something that's in their head if you want to get some ideas? Christina, let's do you, and then Drew, we'll do you next.
I don't know if I could try to share at all, but so I haven't done any parts yet, because I wanted to try to start sharing and looking at stuff. Let me see if I can try to share my screen.
Mama, it's easy.
My 8-year-old is telling me it's easy.
It really is.
Okay, desktop.
Yeah, you need to give her, there you go.
Do I do it? Am I
Yeah.
sharing? Yes? Okay.
Yep, we got it.
Let me open it. Let me open it up.
Let's get a hang of it.
Okay. Okay. You can hear her background. You can be quiet now. So what I've done is I've done a couple different approaches, like what Jennifer did. I have an approach in C that I've done just part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and that's it. This is a, like what we were talking about earlier as far as small pieces. These are 1 minute to 1.5 minutes, 3 pieces. The first one is for grade 1, then grade 2, and this one is for grade 3. It was a quartet. So, but I've gone back and I said, and I have a C score here, and I have it transposed, where the top line is probably only going to be performed by flute or oboe, or somebody can transpose up. And then a second, or you could have clarinet and B flat, soprano, sax. So I have 4 different instruments that could play part 1. Same thing with part 2, part 3, and 5 instruments could play part 4. I did not assume a tuba, and I didn't know. That was one of my questions, is can I assume that most, high schools have tubas? That's a question out to the group.
Yes, I would say so.
Okay, so then I could add, to that bottom one, I could add tuba to that, and they could octave down. Obviously that's a bit high for the tuba, and they could just drop it down an octave. Would you probably add the octave right there on the score to make it easier and clear for them that they could drop it an octave?
I think at a grade 3, that would be very helpful. They won't necessarily be used to reading down.
Okay. What I've done here on my second piece is this one I decided I wanted to keep just for brass. It is a fanfare, but I looked at different options and how could different parts do it. So for part 1 and 2, you could have trumpet or cornet or flugelhorn. This is a grade 3 to 4, so even if you're at a junior college or whatever, they might have flugelhorn or cornet parts. And then the part 3, the horn and F, and then the other instruments. So again, I have this in different formats. So I have it as part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, in just a C score, and then I have it fully transposed, you know, for the directors. I'm going to move over. I have two screens. I'm going to move over something I'm currently working on and I'm not done with yet. Here we go. This was, I worked with, are you guys familiar with leading tones music? Yes, okay. So this was a piece I did for leading tones music, and it was originally 17 wind parts plus percussion. So I've been working with Melanie Brooks over there, and this is not, it was originally written for a grade 3 solo and a grade 1.5 wind band. And because what we talked about earlier, as far as they got to breathe, they got to have a little space. So I haven't quite built in some space. So I'm looking at this, and now that I've combined, when you had the 17 instruments, it was easy. Somebody to have 4 measures, and they break for 4 measures. But you don't have this once you combine it. So I'm now looking at it and saying, are there notes I can leave off, or does this really need to be, I think it needs to be at least a grade 2, just so they don't pass out, I think, or, you know, but they have been, this piece has been played by grade 1.5 wind band already and recorded. So I know some of this can be done, but I'm gonna go up to a grade 2 just because of endurance issues. So I just thought, I'm not done yet. I just wanted to know, you know, any feedback on that.
I guess I'm seeing part like 4 and 3 like kind of flip-flopped.
Yeah, and that's just temporarily because I have part 3. That was originally trumpet. So you know, you have your brass down, and so I have to rearrange that. And so again, I'm not done yet. I've just gotten the 17 down to 5.
That's good. Yeah, and one thing too to think about in terms of if a piece is going to be like, oh, is this possible to be able to do in a virtual setting? Some students might not have access to all of the percussion equipment they normally would in a band room, but they might be able to have like a drum and a bell kit down at home. So if you're able to kind of simplify or modify percussion parts to fit kind of more limited percussion, that can help too, or making things optional.
Yes, and it's going to be optional. I have the percussion being optional, and the percussion part right now, you have a snare drum and a tom. That's it, you know, and then the bells. But again, that's optional. It doesn't need to be there. But again, this is a mixed level because Leading Tones works with mixed level performers, and that's what this is. So, and I have a duet I've finished that's a little bit more simple. And I guess that's more of that flexible duets where you can have lots of different instruments doing that. That's the most flexible. So that's where I am so far.
Looks great. Any comments or questions for Christina? All right.
Okay. I have to unstop share. Okay, there we go.
There it is. Awesome. Let's move on to Drew. Drew, what do you have to share with us?
My question was, what do you composers think about the idea of creating adaptable music from short score as opposed to the full score that's orchestrated out?
I mean, I think it's, I don't know, like, I think what I was kind of implying, but I didn't say short score, is like, I kind of think of lines in short score. So that might be to your advantage, especially because, like, in a way, again, when you write flexible music, it has to be about the line. You know, I was thinking about, like, I was talking to my one of my interlocutor students this morning. We were talking about Bach, and I was specifically talking about the Anton Webern orchestration of the Ricercare. And it's like, Bach didn't even write for the piano, right? But pianists still play it. And they're different, like, wind band arrangements or just arrangements of Bach. It's like, kind of see it as like, it's about the line. And you can see like the Bach chorales or the Bach 4-part stuff as like your short score. So yes, short score. And actually, I think like almost every single one of my professors, except for one, was like short score all the way when like writing like any large ensemble, anything. So I think it would be especially helpful in flex scoring.
Any other comments on the short score versus full instrumentation. I personally think that would be easier too.
I will add that what I've done in the piece that I'm working on, I'm on my phone, so I can't share it, but I have a piano part, which it's already been said that, you know, it doesn't just double everything. It's like a standalone part that's optional, but really helpful. Could either be played by a teacher or I'm providing a recording of it, so that would work as well. But over top of the piano part, I also include chord names, so that if, let's say, a bass player or a guitar player or somebody else, like rhythm section type person, wants to kind of create their own part based on the chords that are provided. So I have basically a short score plus that. So I think that that would also help with the directors in their analysis of like understanding the piece, because I basically provide that to them. So just something to think about for other composers who might want to implement that. I think that's going to be something that people will appreciate a lot.
And actually, I forgot to add with the Balmage's technique, he does have chord symbols, because what if the music ed teacher's a guitarist, right? I'm actually, you know what? I'm going to quickly share the screen really quick, super quick, because it's right here on my desktop, because I need to like show it. Yeah, so he has samples of his music. Y'all see that? B flat, E flat, B flat / D, piano, guitar. Yeah, I've been a little lazy. I gotta put in my chord symbols. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Thank you, Jennifer. And that is similar to a lot of method books. Like method books will have the piano accompaniment with the chord changes on them too. So kind of relying on those pedagogical elements. Michael, did you have a comment in this vein?
Yeah, something that's kind of in the works with one of my friends who's teaching over at like Brunswick in Portland, Maine. Funding has to go through first, but the idea was he wanted like at least like rehearsal things that he could work on for any kind of ensemble size. So what he wants, hopefully, is basically the Bach chorales arranged, and each part would essentially have the 4 voices on them. So people would be reading from a score essentially, but transposed to their instrument, so that it's basically like a flex instrumentation for whatever he has that day. So if he does have a full ensemble, then it can be like just the full, like has like flutes and clarinets, then says, okay, well, let's basically do this as a woodwind choir setup. So let's have these lower clarinets play the bass line, and then flutes play the top part, which I think might work. The only thing I'm concerned about is what if you only have like the low brass as your setup for that block of rehearsal or class or whatever it is. So trying to make adjustments and try to make sure that the bass line can fit within the range of like, let's say a flute, if that's all you have with you and you're all dealing with flutes. That's one thing we're trying to work out and talk through. But otherwise, it kind of sounds like if you had the Hunsberger conducting book and how everything's on an open or like a closed score, and all the parts are just on a different page transposed, so it's whoever can play it whenever.
That's a great idea, Michael. I linked in the chat the method book Bach and Before for band, and I think there's a string version too. It sounds similar, so just before your friend duplicates, making sure that like what he's thinking of is something that's not already out there, because otherwise a lot of schools do already have this method book, which is great, but it sounds like maybe what you're talking about is a little more complex, so that would be wonderful too. Let's move to Molly. You've had your hand up, so I'd love to have you present what you're thinking about.
Oh, I had more of a question for, I guess, both for composers who are self-publishing and also ensemble directors who are facing budget slashes in the wake of all of this. As far as the creation of all of these additional, I guess, what do you call it, like support elements, like the click tracks and the additional materials, is that something both from either a composer's side or a director's side, as far as pricing your flex pieces and offering the different extras included in that, or is that something that you would want to add on if you had the budget to do so? Or I guess what are the perspectives in that area?
I didn't know, Gary, did you raise your hand to like answer that question, or is this a different question? Okay. So I will have to say, Molly, and to all composers here, since we had a very kind of a lively debate with CRI, because the thing is, we are all different composers. We all have different situations. Some of us have a tenured or tenure track job, and some of us are completely self-employed and just watched all of our earnings plummet. So we personally with CRI decided to figure it out ourselves. And originally there was somebody who was like, let's make it all free for everybody. And I'm sitting here with my flex piece, hiding these stems like you not believe, thinking like, I'm never gonna get paid enough to do my own parts. Now that being said, budgets are being slashed and frozen and whatnot. So I'll tell you all personally what I've decided to do with consultation with a small group of friends was that based on the grade level, I've like assigned a price to my piece. And especially if I'm arranging something, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that grade level and then sell it at 2/3 the cost. And instead of like billing directors right away, I'm going to do, or I have been doing a PayPal thing where I send them a 90-day invoice. So they have up to 90 days to pay what they can. And if they can't pay in 90 days, I'm happy to have a conversation with them and figure that out. To answer your MP3 question, actually my Sounds for the Grey Goo does have an accompanying bass clarinet track because my friend in graduate school had to improvise with herself. And so I had these 40 tracks. I am providing those separately with charge because I feel like I should pay her. That's actually the main reason. So I guess what I'm saying is, I would probably just ask your friends. I think there's nothing wrong with charging for your labor. And that's something we have to get over. And it sucks because like, I wish if I had a trust fund, I'd give out my music for maybe like a small amount. Because I feel like in our capitalist system, we do need to charge something, right? And I'm for the barter system. But I think in the spirit of flex instrumentation, we kind of have to be in the spirit of flex payment and see the best we can do. So again, my solution is charge 2/3 of what I normally would. Oh, and I'm also, as of now, and I might change my mind because I'm still trying to figure out the situation. I've decided to only have them on my website and only as PDFs because I don't want to have anyone pay for shipping costs. I don't want to have to pay for like paper. I get the impression that that is most convenient is to have a PDF. And I don't want any overhead. Like, again, I want to get paid, but also make it as cheaply as possible. And that's the solution I have so far. However, I do know of like some school districts where they have to have a specific vendor. So I'm still trying to figure that out. I know like JW Peppers approached me, although I don't really want to go with them. I'll be really honest. Like I feel very icky, but I know that sometimes like that's the only venue way to do it. So again, for now, and I'm going to go through this, 2/3 of the cost and an invoice, a 90-day invoice, because I think that's the solution. But again, please know that it's okay to charge for your music and that it's also great to have a conversation with your band director friends and just figure out the best solution because we all have to be adaptable.
I would say in terms of like, talking about like an a la carte kind of menu of like, do you want the piece? Do you want the piece with the MP3s, etc.? That can get a little bit busy and overwhelming. I would rather you come up with a price point you're comfortable with the MP3 and just make that the package. Because if you start nitpicking like that, you're going to get confused. They're going to confuse. And also, I don't know that you could offer your MP3s at like a price point that's like prohibitively expensive. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if it's just like a $5 difference, like just leave it in there. So I would just include the one price and just make it as easy as possible for people to get your music. Drew, did you have something on this?
Unmute.
You're mute. Oh, there you
Oh, there you go. What are you doing about page size for your digital scores with access to printers and stuff and not being able to use standard page sizes that we might expect?
That's a great question. I've consciously made my scores 8.5 by 11 so far, which has been a little painful. It's been, well, I mean, I actually had to adapt that for band anyway, because my experience is I would have like MOLA paper sizes for bands, and because you never know how many clarinetists you're going to get in a section, how many flute players, etc. I've actually the last couple of years been adjusting my like 10 by 13 or my 9 by 12 to be 8.5 by 11, because I think like one school had a group of freshmen who did Xeroxes and they were like this tiny, and I'm like, oh my God, you are giving me wrinkles right now for you're looking at. I'm like, are you okay? They're like, no, we're cool. I'm like, look, I know you all have young eyes, but like I like no. So like I've just switched over by 8.5 by 11. It's just easier distribution, especially for PDFs, because like I've been wanting to do PDFs for the longest time. So I would say as much as possible. And I'd say that but for flex instrumentation, you shouldn't have like a big score, but like I'm just saying in general, band music has been 8.5 by 11 because that's just where it is.
Honestly, band directors appreciate the PDFs because then we get it immediately. We can start reading the score and we can start like figuring out parts and stuff, and we don't have to just wait and wait and wait for the shipping. With our time left, I do want to make sure we get to Gary. So let's go ahead to Gary. If we trickle over a little bit past 5:30 Eastern, we'll just stick around and make sure we wrap up this conversation. Gary, go ahead.
I was going to say, I guess after thinking about it, and in fact, I guess when Kate was asked a question about what do you do about parts, it just kind of reminded me, even though I have not written anything on my own, anything original for flex instrumentation, I've conducted the Fisk University Jazz Ensemble. This is going to be my 18th year now. And in that group, I've never had a traditional setup. In fact, my very first year, clarinet, me playing clarinet, flute, no, 2 flutes, violin. Like in 2008, we did have close to a big band. I had like 3 trumpets, 3 saxophones and all that. But my point being, I've taken like the same music almost, and all I do is like I score like when I think I would originally score it for whatever instruments were available, but then when I decide to adapt it to another group that has different instrumentation, I just kind of rewrite those parts, and so it's still all going to work regardless. But as I said, I just don't promote it. In fact, I don't promote it because it's all mine. I've never even tried to publish it. But point still being that I guess that's kind of my closest I have to something with flex instrumentation. I do also, I've recently written a chamber work for someone who still hasn't programmed it yet. And so I'm considering kind of adopting that for a flex instrumentation. In fact, it was written for mostly band instruments. So anyway, just wanted to share that.
That's awesome. And I would say, and this is like a parting gift to everybody, the CRI Facebook group is a place to promote yourselves. Please, 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 please promote yourselves as best we can do. Because again, we want to help. We're not here to promote our own music. In fact, we were terrible at this. We were like, no one's putting our own music on the Facebook page. But I would love to see like more like people of color and women promote their flexible instrumentation on that Facebook group. We need more of that. So just please do that. There's anything else? I saw a couple of questions. I don't know if I should answer them. Yes. Okay. How do I do invoice through PayPal? So I set up my own PayPal account and I have it on my website so that I get an email saying that they would like to get a PayPal. I wish there was a way to automate this. So then I have to make the PayPal invoices myself. Okay. And it has a pre-made template. Trust me, I've thought about this. I would say that, oh, awesome video. I will say that if I can't keep up with it anymore, I might need to pay somebody like my assistant to help me out with that. But until then, I'm just, so far I got 1 request because I know it's summer and no one has money right now. So we will see. But I think you have to do it manually. So I'm sorry.
if I could comment, I do invoices through PayPal, but they're usually to pay immediately. I didn't know how you do the.
Yeah, there's a drop down box.
Okay,
which is awesome. And that's why, like, because at first I was like, do I just make it due on September 15th? And I'm like, you know what, 90 days.
Okay.
It'll do that. And I might need to check. I haven't gotten that far yet, but you could do the 90-day invoice thing, which is great.
Okay, yeah, I'll look, because I do have it all automated. I just didn't know how to change it from pay me now.
Understood.
That's awesome. I'm so glad we got so many questions answered. I'm sure there's might be some more. So I don't know, Jen, if you want to put an email address in the chat, possibly, if people want to directly contact you. You could also directly contact me if you have any conductor specific, ensemble specific, director specific questions, or Jonathan as well. Jonathan's on our website at And We Were Heard as well. If you do come up with music in the next couple months that you want recorded through And We Were Heard, we're going to try to jump on that. As we reach out to directors right now, they're not sure what's happening with their falls, but if and when they are ready to do a piece of flexible music, if we have that music ready to go, we will match it and try to get it recorded as soon as possible. Not only is that going to be good for your fall, having a live recording of the piece, but as Jen mentioned, there's going to be a continual need for this music with ensembles that just don't have the standard instrumentation after COVID-19 restrictions are lifted. So this music will continue to serve you in your career moving forward, and having that live recording will also continue to serve that. So we're happy to take that music. I know Jennifer Rose just sent us that piece, and I'm hoping to get you matched up with what is it, Indiana State, I think is interested in recording that for you, Jennifer. So they're just waiting on seeing what's going to be happening with their fall. So thank you all. Jen and I will stick around for a little bit if anybody has just a quick something for us, but otherwise we will wrap it up. Thank you so much for attending. This will be posted on the website and shared on our social media if you want to share or revisit. So thanks again, and best of luck with the rest of your summer and fall, and we'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.